Okay. Here's the beginning of the story based on your prompt, written in a confessional, emotionally honest tone. My name's Julia. I'm 34, and I haven't been able to sleep properly in weeks. Not because of insomnia. Not even because of anxiety, though God knows that's been lurking like a shadow around every corner lately. No, it's because I can't stop replaying the moment he asked me how many people I'd been with before him, and how I answered. 53. I didn't even flinch when I said it. I didn't say it to provoke or to test him. I wasn't trying to be bold or perform some kind of sexual transparency. I said it because he asked, and because I loved him. Still do. His name is Mark. We've been together for 3 years. He was the first man who made me feel like I didn't have to package my past into something more palatable. The first man who kissed my scars, literal and otherwise, and said, "None of that makes you less." Or so I thought. When we met, everything about us felt easy. I remember that night in Vancouver, sitting on the steps of that dim little jazz bar, our knees touching under my coat. He told me he didn't believe in soulmates, but that sometimes chemistry was its own kind of fate. I laughed and told him I believed in neither. He said, "Then let's just believe in this." And for a while, I did. We used to touch all the time. Not even always sexually. Sometimes it was just his hand on the small of my back while I made coffee, or how he'd hook his foot around mine under the blanket while we watched some terrible true crime show. He used to kiss the top of my head when I folded laundry, and it always made me smile even when I pretended to be annoyed by it. Now he doesn't touch me like that anymore. A few nights ago, I curled up against him in bed, instinctively reaching for his hand. He didn't move, didn't pull away, but didn't hold me either. It was like trying to reach for someone through glass. I asked him if something was wrong, and he just said, "I'm tired." Even our kisses have changed. We used to kiss like we couldn't get enough of each other. Now, when I lean in, he meets me halfway, but it's mechanical, like he's clocking in. Sometimes I feel like I'm kissing a memory. I tried to make light of it once. "You don't even cuddle me anymore," I said, hoping it would sound playful. He didn't laugh. Just said, "I guess I'm not in the mood lately," and turned over. I stared at the ceiling that night, wondering how a person can be so close and still feel miles away. I kept thinking, what changed? And then I remembered the way he looked at me after I told him. The way he blinked twice and then just nodded. Like he'd swallowed something bitter and was trying not to gag. He didn't ask follow-up questions. Didn't say anything at all for a few minutes. That was 6 weeks ago. At first, I told myself I was imagining it, that it wasn't connected. But now I feel it in the space between us, the space that used to be warm and full and humming with shared breath. It's a silence that grows louder every day. I think the moment I really knew something had changed was last weekend. We were folding the laundry, same as always, and I stood there, waiting for that kiss on the top of my head. It didn't come. Not even a glance. That's when it hit me. He still folds the towels the way I like. He still makes my coffee just the way I take it. He still shows up. But the warmth is gone. And it's not because he's tired. It's because something in him recoiled when he saw a part of me he didn't want to know. I keep asking myself, was it the number? Or the truth that I wasn't who he thought I was? Maybe both. And now I don't know how to reach him if I even can. Got it. Building on Julia and Mark's story, I'll create a scene that deepens their disconnect through a misunderstanding, highlighting how Mark tries to express love physically but Julia craves emotional closeness first. I'll set Mark as a firefighter to bring unique tension from his demanding, high-stress job. Mark's boots thudded against the hardwood floor as he stepped inside after a 12-hour shift. His uniform was damp, still smelling faintly of smoke and sweat, the smell I used to find strangely comforting. Tonight, it felt like a wall between us. I was sitting on the couch, curled up in my favorite knit sweater, my phone half forgotten on my lap. When he saw me, his tired eyes softened for a moment. Without a word, he crossed the room and wrapped his arms around me in a tight, urgent hug. "Hey," he murmured against my hair. But it wasn't the soft, familiar embrace I used to crave. It was more like he was holding on because he needed to, not because he wanted to. I stiffened. "Mark," I tried to pull back gently, searching his face. "I need to talk." He pressed a kiss to my temple and tightened his grip, as if to silence me. "Not now, Jules. I'm beat." I swallowed hard. The words I'd rehearsed all day, how I felt invisible, how I needed more than just his tired arms, got stuck in my throat. So instead, I nodded and let him hold me. But inside, a slow ache spread, the ache of being touched but not truly seen. Later, in the quiet of our bedroom, I caught him trying again. This time, he pulled me close, pressing his body against mine like he was trying to communicate through the contact. His voice was low, rough from the day's smoke and adrenaline. "I'm trying, Julia. I'm here." "I know," I whispered, "but it feels like you're here with your body, not your heart." He sighed, his fingers tracing restless patterns on my back. "I just don't know how to say it right," he admitted. After the firehouse, the chaos, the calls, I come home wanting to fix everything with a hug. "Maybe it's stupid." "It's not stupid," I said, reaching up to cup his face. "But I don't want just a hug. I want us. The us that talks and listens." He blinked, surprised. "I want to feel like you're not afraid of my past. Like you want all of me, even the parts that scare you." Mark pulled me closer again, slower this time, like he was trying to memorize the shape of my sadness. "I'm scared," he confessed. "Not of your past, of losing you." I smiled sadly, resting my head on his chest. "Then let's start with talking." For once, words felt like a lifeline between us, fragile but real. Here's that next scene, focusing on Julia's conflicted feelings, her desire tangled with confusion and growing resentment, as Mark tries to reconnect physically but she recoils inside even while wanting to want him. We were in the kitchen, making dinner like we always did on Friday nights. The warm hum of the oven and the clink of utensils was the soundtrack of a routine I used to find comforting. Tonight, it felt like a countdown. Mark came up behind me, his hand landing lightly on my hip. I felt the weight of his presence, the familiar heat, but instead of the usual spark, my skin prickled with a quiet resistance. He gave my hip a quick, playful slap, the kind of gesture he'd used to tease me months ago. I flinched, though I forced a laugh and turned to meet his eyes. "You okay?" he asked, his voice soft but hopeful. "Yeah," I said too quickly. "Just tired." He smiled, a little uncertain, and leaned down to kiss my neck. I wanted to lean into it, to close my eyes and melt against him like I used to, but my heart twisted. Instead, I stayed still, my lips barely brushing his skin. He pulled back, eyebrows knitting together. "Julia?" I shook my head, trying to explain without words. I reached for a spoon and stirred the sauce, focusing on the mundane instead of the mess inside me. "Is it me?" he asked quietly. "Am I doing something wrong?" I swallowed. "No, it's not you. It's me," he sighed, stepping back. "I just want to feel close to you again." I wanted to reach for him, wanted to close the distance that stretched between us like a canyon. But every time he touched me now, a silent alarm went off in my mind. Why does everything have to turn into sex? It wasn't that I didn't want him. I did. I wanted the old Mark, the one who kissed me like he couldn't get enough, who held me without expecting more. But now, even the smallest touch felt loaded, like it was a test I wasn't sure I could pass. I glanced at him, his hopeful eyes, and my throat tightened. I didn't know how to say what I needed, how to tell him that sometimes. I just wanted to be held without the pressure, without the history and the expectations. "Can we just sit?" I whispered. He nodded, stepping back but not leaving. We sat side by side at the table, the space between us still buzzing. And I wondered if we could find a way back, or if the distance was already too wide. Would you like me to explore Julia's thoughts more deeply here or focus next on Mark's perspective? Here's a raw, emotional scene where Julia's frustration finally breaks through during what should have been a tender evening, followed by Mark's reaction and Julia's inner turmoil. We were sitting at the small table by the window, the soft glow of the candle flickering between us. Mark had cooked my favorite meal, a rare gesture since he was usually too exhausted, and for a moment I let myself think maybe tonight would be different. He reached across and took my hand, squeezing it gently. "I missed you today," he said. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to reach back, to close the distance. But all I could feel was the weight of the secret I'd carried into this room, the one he'd never truly accepted. "I know you're trying," I said, voice barely steady. "But it feels like you're pushing me away." His brows furrowed. "What are you talking about?" I looked down at our hands, twisting the thin gold band I wore. "You learned about my past, how many men I've been with. And since then, everything's changed. You won't cuddle me. You don't touch me like before. Sometimes I feel like you see me as damaged." The tears came suddenly, blurring my vision. I wasn't sure if it was relief or despair. "I'm tired, Mark. Tired of feeling like I'm not enough. Tired of pretending everything's okay when it's not." He pulled back, his face hardening. "I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to want me. Not just my body, not just the parts you can control. I want you to want all of me." The silence stretched thick between us. Then his voice, low and brittle. "You knew what you were getting into, Julia. Why is this suddenly such a problem?" The words hit me like a slap. I blinked back more tears. "Because it's not just a number. It's how you look at me now. Like I'm some experiment gone wrong. You're cold, distant, and you won't even cuddle me anymore." He shook his head and stood abruptly. "Maybe you should figure out what you want." The door clicked shut behind him. I sat there, heart pounding, the remnants of dinner growing cold. I wanted to scream, to beg him to stay, but all I could do was curl into myself, overwhelmed by shame and confusion. Why did telling him the truth feel like the moment everything broke? Why did everything have to turn into sex? I hated how angry I felt, hated that I'd let the pain spill out like that. But most of all, I hated feeling invisible in the person who was supposed to love me best. Want me to continue with Julia's attempts to heal the rift, or shift to Mark's perspective next? Here's the continuation showing the growing coldness between Julia and Mark, with Julia's conflicted emotions and a glimpse into Mark's own struggles, ending on her deciding whether to fight for the relationship or let go. Days turned into weeks, and the space between us grew like a shadow stretching across the room. The apartment felt emptier, even when we were in the same room. Mark's quietness wasn't just distance anymore, it was a wall. I'd catch him staring out the window, his jaw tight, hands clenched like he was holding onto something I couldn't reach. Sometimes, late at night, I'd hear him breathing heavy in the other room, maybe replaying memories I wasn't part of, or battles he never told me about. He wasn't a villain. Not really. Just a man weighed down by things I could only guess at, a man scared, maybe as lost as I was. I missed the way his eyes used to light up when I walked in after work. Missed the easy laughter, the warmth that wrapped around me like a blanket. I missed being the woman he wanted to come home to, but I didn't know how to reach him anymore. Every time I tried, I felt like I was pushing too hard or stepping into a silence that swallowed me whole. The guilt settled deep in my chest, the guilt of the past I couldn't undo, of the words spilled in anger, of the love I wasn't sure he still felt. One night, I stood by the door as he zipped up his firefighter jacket, ready for another long shift. He looked at me for a second, really looked, before turning away. I swallowed hard, the decision heavy on my tongue. Do I try again? Can I? Or is it time to walk away from the man who once held me so close, but now feels like a stranger? I didn't know the answer yet. But I knew one thing. I still wanted to believe in us. Would you like me to continue with Julia's attempt to rebuild the relationship or explore Mark's side next? Here's a bittersweet, grounded ending where Julia and Mark tentatively begin to heal through honest conversation and new boundaries, with a quietly tender moment that holds emotional weight without fixing everything at once. That night, after Mark came home from his shift, we sat on opposite ends of the couch, the silence stretching between us like a fragile thread. I took a deep breath and finally spoke, my voice soft but steady. I don't want us to keep drifting apart. I want to try, really try, but I need to know you're with me. He nodded slowly, rubbing the back of his neck like he was wrestling with his own walls. I'm scared, Jules. Scared that I'll never be enough, or that your past will always be between us. I'm scared too, I admitted. But maybe if we set some boundaries, no assumptions, no silence when things get hard, we can find a way back. He reached for my hand, fingers curling around mine with a hesitant warmth. Okay, let's start there. Later, as I rested my head against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath my ear, he kissed the top of my forehead. It wasn't a fix. It wasn't a promise that everything would be perfect, but it was real. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like maybe that was enough. Would you like a more final ending where Julia realizes it's too late instead, or should I expand on their healing journey? 9.